What you choose to put in the ground, by So Do Roses. Summary. Logan and Patton are, understandably, a bit hesitant about making friends. Roman has no such qualms. Or, Roman finds the weirdest kids in school and instantly becomes ride or die. The rating for this fic is general audiences. The relationships are Roman/Logan, Logan/Patton, Roman/Patton, and Endgame Lamp. Additional tags: alternate universe modern setting, alternate universe fantasy, fae and fairies, urban fantasy, bullying, compulsive behaviors. The amount of chill Roman has is expressed in negative numbers. Mind control. This was supposed to be a one-shot. Rest in peace, me. Chapter 1. Roman had a map, a stack of brand new school supplies, and more excitement than should really be able to fit in his body. Wick Hill's public school was not really big enough that Roman actually needed a map, but new students in movies always had maps. Roman felt that was a very important part of being new. The school was so small that the elementary, middle, and high schools were all on the same campus, 3 buildings separated by narrow walkways and not much else. The sports fields dwarfed the buildings 3 times over, and the middle school was the smallest building of all with only 3 grades in it. Roman was not interested in sports. He got quite enough exercise traipsing through the forest, thank you. But he was incredibly excited about the other extracurriculars. You wouldn't think that a school this small would have much in the way of those, but Wick Hill's always managed to be self-sufficient in spite of its small size. And of course, everyone knew that the Fae loved the artists best. But the first drama club meeting wasn't for another week. Right now, Roman was just trying to find his English classroom. He thought it would be nice to talk to the other kids about books while he read them. Mamaw was a lovely discussion partner, but she always already knew how the story ended before he did, which really was not much fun at all. Roman turned right and seemed to end up in the same hallway he'd been in 3 times. Maybe he did need the map. The English classroom was marked in blue, the number circled, and when Roman looked at the numbers on the doors he was passing, he realized the reason he'd been walking past the room was because he'd accidentally covered the last number when he circled it. Roman found the correct classroom and took a deep breath as he walked in. A gray-haired man with wire-framed glasses looked up from the board, raised his eyebrows, and the other students followed his gaze. "Can I help you?" said the teacher. "Are you Mr. Mitchell?" "Yes. Are you the student who failed to arrive to my class in time for attendance?" Roman wavered, eyes darting between the teacher, looking very unamused, and the other students, all of whom were either smirking or avoiding eye contact. "I suppose," he said hesitantly. Mr. Mitchell scoffed. "Your attitude does not bode well for the rest of the year, Mr. Gage. I just couldn't find the classroom." "I don't care about your excuses, Mr. Gage. Please take your seat." Roman had seen enough movies to know there was no way he was going to win this, and that putting up a fight would only make it worse. Didn't mean he had to be happy about it. He sat in his seat, placing his stack of things in the basket underneath the chair. He pulled out the folder he'd designated for English and did his very best not to glare at the teacher and really make everything worse. Mr. Mitchell finished outlining the syllabus, and the longer he spoke, Roman realized that the other students had a copy of it in front of them, and Roman didn't. He raised his hand. About the time his arm started to ache, he realized that the teacher was deliberately ignoring him. Lowering his arm, he glanced at the paper next to him. "Excuse me?" he said quietly. The student next to him raised his eyes, looking stunned that Roman had spoken to him. His glasses were a little big on his face, his eyes very round and very gray. He looked a bit like an owl. "Yes?" "Could I move my desk closer to yours? I don't have a syllabus." "I suppose?" Roman wasn't sure why this was a weird request, but if the other boy wasn't arguing, Roman wasn't going to call him on his hesitance. Luckily, the desk didn't squeak, and the teacher didn't seem to notice. Roman pulled out a piece of paper and began to copy down what looked like the most important parts from the other student's paper. After a minute, the other boy put a hand over Roman's paper. "You can't do that," he said. "Do what?" Roman said incredulously. "Write in red pen," said the other boy, as though he was speaking to someone incredibly stupid. "Why not?" "Red pen is for mistakes," he said. "You have to write in blue or black." All my pens are red, Roman said flatly. Red is my favorite color, so that's all I got. I can provide you with a suitable pen. I also have pencils, if you would prefer them. Do you have any red pencils? Said Roman, a little sarcastically. The other boy looked pained. You are validating my inherent mistrust of strangers, he said. Mr. Gage, Mr. Sanders, did you have something you wanted to share with the rest of the class? No, not particularly, said, well, apparently his last name was Sanders, and he was even worse at staying out of trouble than Roman. I'll thank you to move your seat back to its appropriate position, Mr. Gage. I don't have a syllabus, so I'm reading off of his, said Roman, trying his best to sound neutrally pleasant. Then maybe next time you'll arrive to class on time. I will give you a syllabus at the end of the period. How am I supposed to? If you continue to argue with me, I will be happy to give you the syllabus in detention. He can hardly be expected to participate in the lesson when he does not have the necessary materials, blurted the boy next to him. Excuse me. You illogically singled him out for lateness, he continued, his voice speeding up as he spoke. It is not as if Wickhills is inundated with new students, so you knew he was unfamiliar with the building, and it is unreasonable to expect him to know the layout of the school on his first day. You also ignored him when he raised his hand, and therefore it was obviously necessary for him to seek out a solution to his problem through another avenue. You know, Mr. Sanders, if you wanted you and your new friend to have detention, you only had to ask. The boy squinted. I do not understand how you arrived at the conclusion that I wanted detention, he said, and it is erroneous to describe us as friends, as we have exchanged the bare minimum of communication at this point. He paused. And also he uses the wrong color pens. Oh my God, said Roman quietly, wondering if this boy was really that dense, but having the sneaking suspicion he was actually serious. What? Red pens are for mistakes. You two can feel free to have this discussion in the hallway, said Mr. Mitchell, where you cannot continue to disrupt my class. Roman made an affronted noise, but the other boy simply gave a small sigh and grabbed his bag. On what grounds? Demanded Roman. This is not a courtroom, Mr. Gage, said the teacher tiredly. I do not need grounds to remove you, or indeed grounds to have you both removed from the honors course entirely. But I know you are new at this, said Sanders in a low tone, so your attempts to defend yourself are understandable, but they are also a waste of time. It's never a waste of time to question an unjust authority, Roman hissed back. Quaint, but wildly naive. In the hall, please. Roman huffed, stacking his things and following the other student out the door. He seemed totally unconcerned at being expelled from the classroom, sitting down and pulling out a heavy text. So you're just going to let him get away with this? That got him a stunned, bitter laugh. You really are naive, he said. They don't get away with anything. They're in charge. They can do whatever they want. You say naive, I say idealistic, Roman huffed, plopping down next to him. Naive, idealistic, tomato, solanum like a persicum. Replacing a word with a synonym does not change basic facts. Do you always talk like a human thesaurus? Yes. Roman stared, baffled. You're not messing with me? The boy turned, brow furrowed. What do you mean? Roman stared, and he couldn't help the way his mouth wanted to pull up into a smile. I'm Roman, by the way, he said, holding out his hand. I know your name. You are the only new student in the Wickhills Public School, discounting the kindergartners, of course. Your name was the only thing Patton would talk about this morning. Roman couldn't help but laugh. Traditionally, you tell me your name now. Oh, he said, that makes sense. My name is Logan Sanders. Roman thought that name sounded familiar, but couldn't place it, and Logan continued before he could think about it any longer. And I apologize for exacerbating the situation with Mr. Mitchell, Logan said. I was trying to help, but I should have known better. I have never successfully defused a situation before, and it was foolish to try. Oh, woe is me. Someone tried to defend me from unjust accusations, Roman laughed. However will I recover, you fiend? Logan's mouth twitched. I am almost certain that you are being humorous, and if I am correct, then I will concede that I am amused. How gracious of you, Roman replied. It is, isn't it? Said Logan, the small, smug smile still in place. Roman decided that, tossed out of class or not, the day was not entirely a bust. Roman had no idea where to sit. The cafeteria wasn't very big, and there weren't that many people, but what they lacked in numbers they made up for in sheer, ear-throbbing noise. Roman, whose loudest life experiences so far were limited to the farmer's market and a dozen chickens, found himself incredibly overwhelmed. Until he caught sight of one familiar face. He squeezed past a knot of eighth graders and put on his best, most winning smile as he plopped down across from Logan. The table had 6 chairs and was empty besides Logan, Roman, and one other boy Roman hadn't seen yet. He reached across the table to shake the stranger's hand. "Hi, I'm Roman." The stranger looked a little stunned, but recovered quickly. "I'm Patton," he said brightly. "Nice to meet you." "Oh, you're Patton?" Patton's face suddenly fell, though Roman couldn't imagine why. He nodded, staring miserably into his mashed potatoes. "Logan mentioned you in the morning in English," said Roman. "We got into it with Mr. Mitchell, and he threw us out." Logan groaned and slapped his hand over his forehead. "Logan!" said Patton, and his face now showed an entirely different kind of distress. "It's the first day of school!" "Whoa, wait, it was my fault," said Roman. "I showed up late and Mitchell got mad." "It was not your fault," said Logan, suddenly vehement. "How can you be expected to know the layout of a building you have never been in? And not giving you a syllabus was a petty slight. He was being unreasonable." "Logan," said Patton softly, "you have to pick your battles." "I do pick my battles," said Logan petulantly. "I simply pick more of them than most people." "Well, in that case, I think we're going to get along splendidly," said Roman. "I doubt that. You use the wrong color pens," said Logan, and Roman actually couldn't tell if he was being serious. "Logan is very passionate about colors," said Patton sagely. "I am passionate about color coding. There is a difference." "Sure there is." "I write in red pen because it's my favorite color," said Roman. "I don't think colors are that complicated." "I write my name in blue glitter pen," said Patton. "It drives Logan loony." "Glitter pen is not an appropriate academic medium." "Do you have any other glitter pens?" asked Roman. "You bet I do," said Patton excitedly, pulling a bag of 12 rainbow glitter pens from his pencil bag. "Is this a coup?" said Logan incredulously. "It's called democracy," said Roman, picking a bright red glitter pen from the pack and immediately starting a drawing on his left hand. "And it's rich that you're complaining about me violating appropriate color coding. Your English folder is yellow." "Of course it's yellow. What else would it be?" "English is red, obviously. Science is yellow." Logan looked actually offended. "Science is green, and I have no idea how you arrived at any other conclusion." "Oh, it's a conclusion?" said Roman with a smirk. "Can you explain your reasoning?" Logan's ears turned pink. It's common sense." "Is this a fight?" said Patton hesitantly. "Of course not," said Roman happily. "It's a rousing discussion between friends." "You're insufferable," said Logan. "Ah, but you did not say I wasn't your friend," said Roman, moving on from the little racing flames on his hand and starting on a dragon to breathe them. "I've already wormed my way into your cold, dead heart." Logan sputtered, but Roman just pushed one of his honey biscuits at him. "Have a biscuit, Thesaurus Rex. Goldilocks, you can have one too." "Thank you," said Patton. He grabbed one and took a bite, chewing happily, and froze immediately. His hand jerked out and grabbed Logan's wrist, who had huffed and gone to reach for one of the biscuits. Patton said nervously. "Patton? What's wrong?" said Logan. Patton looked distressed, eyes flitting between Logan and Roman. I don't think Roman knows," says Patton quietly. "I don't know what?" "The biscuits have honey in them," Patton continued, ignoring Roman and looking straight at Logan. Logan's hand, hovering over one of the biscuits, retreated immediately. If you're allergic to bees or something, I don't think it requires quite this much drama," Roman laughed. "I won't bring things with honey in them anymore. It's no big deal." "It isn't that," Logan snapped. And Roman wondered how the atmosphere had gone from jovial to prickly intense in so short a time. Logan took a deep breath and snapped the rubber band off his wrist. As he twisted and pulled it back and forth, he began to speak. "It has become obvious that you do not actually know who I am," he said flatly, "and it stands to reason that you also do not know who Patton is." Roman looked between them, Logan glaring at the table and Patton staring morosely out the window a few yards away. "I don't understand." I know, said Logan. I'm not human. Roman instantly raised his eyebrows. My brother Thomas was kidnapped as a baby, and I was left in his place, Logan continued. My parents retrieved Thomas, but did not give me back. I am a changeling. Roman's hands had tensed on the table, and his instinct to reach for his knife was there, but faint, and he didn't even have it anyway. His eyes started cataloging small things about Logan he hadn't noticed. His eyes weren't quite a normal color. His skin caught the light in a strange way, and he moved too precisely. Roman felt like an idiot for not noticing. And I have a curse on my voice, said Patton sadly, pulling down the neck of his shirt and lifting his head to reveal a faint white handprint. I am not really that safe to be around. That is not accurate, Logan hissed. There is nothing dangerous about you. Yes, there is, said Patton softly. Just not for you, Logan. And then they both fell silent, refusing to make eye contact. They seemed to be waiting for something. Waiting on him, Roman realized. Waiting for him to leave. Waiting for him to run away. Okay, he said, letting out a breath. Okay. Logan's eyebrows shot up, and Patton's head snapped towards Roman, stunned. Okay, said Logan incredulously. Yes, okay. Is there an echo? Said Roman, a little firmer this time. No more honey, then. I can see why you wouldn't want to be drunk at school. Is this a joke? Demanded Logan. No, said Roman, and I'm not going to lie to you. I am a little apprehensive, especially about the changeling thing. I do not have the best track record in getting along with Faye. But I like you, he continued, shrugging. I certainly like you more than all the other jerks in Mitchell's class who laughed at us. Fire-forged friends and all. I'd hardly consider that event to qualify as fire, said Logan, and he was obviously trying to hide the hope in his expression, and failing miserably. And you, said Roman, gesturing at Patton. I don't know what this curse entails exactly, but you're not really that intimidating. You can't say that without knowing what it is, said Patton, and he wasn't trying to hide his hope at all. Then tell me what it is, and I'll make an informed decision, said Roman, pushing the biscuits towards Patton and the orange slices toward Logan. In fact, tell me everything. I love to gossip. Roman wasn't quite sure how he was going to reconcile the part of him that considered all magic a threat and the part of him that already really liked both of the people in front of him. But he was definitely going to try. Mama had been tense and quiet all evening. Roman wasn't sure why she was so upset. She replied with one-word answers and was bizarrely polite, barely responding to his ribbing, and occasionally shooting him looks dripping with anxiety. So, she said, as they sat down at the table, tell me about your first day of school. Roman, who had been waiting for this chance all evening, jumped at the chance to talk. My English teacher is a tyrant, he said. I got tossed out on my ear. Good for you, she said. Better to let him know you won't put up with that shit from the get-go. I had help, Roman continued. He got sent to the hall with me, and we made friends. That's good, she said. Strength in numbers and all that. And you're never going to believe this, said Roman. The kid's a changeling. The glass in Mama's hand shattered. Roman leapt back from the table, heart pounding. Mama seemed completely calm, in spite of the fact that the glass had cut her hand, which was now bleeding sluggishly. She held her palm over her paper napkin and slowly began to pick the pieces of glass out. Get the dustpan, she said coolly, and Roman was so frazzled he obeyed without a word. His hands were shaking as he retrieved the dustpan and broom from the living-room closet, and his heart was beating wildly in his throat as he returned to the kitchen and began to brush the glass into it. The silence continued to go thicker and thicker as Roman cleaned up the glass and Mama moved to the sink to run water over the cut. Dizzy came in from the living room, her fur bristling and her body vibrating with tension as she wound herself around Roman's ankles. Are you okay? Said Roman. His voice cracked on the last word. No, said Mama flatly. She didn't elaborate. She wrapped an older, dark dishcloth around her hand. As Roman dumped the dustpan into the trash, she turned to him and spoke with that same flat tone. Please tie this. Yes, ma'am, he said quickly, tying a neat knot and immediately stepping back. You aren't in trouble, she said quietly. I'm sorry I scared you. I wasn't scared, he lied. She smiled thinly and patted his face with her uninjured hand. Okay, she said, even though it was clear she didn't believe him. What happened? Said Roman softly. Mama's jaw worked back and forth. "Come here, baby," she said quietly, holding out her arms. Roman went instantly, and he held back the noise of complaint when Mama squeezed him so hard he had trouble breathing. "Is it that bad?" he said quietly. "Is he dangerous or something?" "You know the answer to that," she said, "though I don't think anyone in that family could hurt you if they tried." And wasn't that ridiculously cryptic? "You know him?" "No," she said. "Never got the chance." Even when Roman offered to not be friends with Logan, Mama had resisted him. "What's done is done," she said. "I won't take this from you, much as it might kill me." And she'd refused to say anything more transparent than that, leaving Roman puzzling over what she knew about Logan, how she knew it, and why on earth him being Roman's friend seemed to fill her with a pervasive kind of resigned grief. But she didn't say to leave him alone, and the longer Roman spent with Logan and Patton, the more he felt like he might have to ignore her even if she did. They all just clicked. Even the hiccup where Patton had accidentally told Roman not to pick at his scab, and Roman's hand had slapped down on the table like it was magnetized, hadn't put a damper on their burgeoning friendship. And it was hard for Roman to hold it against him when Patton had burst into tears immediately afterwards. Roman had been running late that morning, so when he came to the table he wasn't expecting Logan to be alone. "Where's Patton?" "Presumably sick," said Logan, and his voice was calm enough, though his hands were fidgeting furiously with his rubber band. "We are getting into the fall weather, and Patton is particularly prone to hay fever. He has allergies." "Are you okay?" "Okay is a nebulous and subjective concept. It means nothing," snapped Logan. Roman gave him an unimpressed look. Logan sighed. "It is nothing you need to concern yourself with, Roman," he insisted. Roman continued to stare. Logan wasn't very good at direct eye contact, but he gave it his best shot for a few seconds before huffing and looking out the window. "I find I am anxious when I do not know exactly where Patton is. I experience the same distress with my brother and parents." "You can't possibly know where Patton is at all times," reasoned Roman. "But I know where he is supposed to be, which is here, and he's not," said Logan vehemently. Hey, easy, Specs," said Roman, hand hovering over Logan's. "I'm sure he's fine." "I know," snapped Logan. "I'm well aware that my current irrationality stems from poorly managed control issues. Patton and I have had extensive discussions on the subject." "Then why are you freaking out?" "Knowing the source of an emotion doesn't make it go away," said Logan. "Although if I could do so, I absolutely would." "Fair enough," said Roman. And then, a little hesitantly, "I guess human emotions aren't your strong suit?" Logan stopped cold. "What exactly are you implying?" "That didn't come out quite right," said Roman. "Then try again," said Logan, and he didn't look happy in the slightest. "And perhaps you could think about it for a few moments, just to make sure there are no misunderstandings." "I just mean—" Roman mulled over the thought for another moment. "Surely you could go, if you really wanted? Go back?" Logan clenched and unclenched his fist a few times. "It can't be easy, being the only fairy among all these humans. I guess I just want to know why you stay," said Roman. Logan stared for another moment, and then reached for his bag for some reason. Logan?" Logan continued to fish various things out of his bag. "If I have overstepped, you can feel free to deck me, although I'd obviously prefer if you didn't." Logan laid one of his textbooks between them, as well as a battered insect field guide and a folded napkin. "Look," said Logan. "I'm looking," said Roman. A pause, then, "What am I looking at?" "You see this?" said Logan, gesturing to the book. "What is it?" "Your science textbook?" Logan shook his head, pointing to the random smattering of stars and flowers in the bottom left corner. "When we got our textbooks, my brother and I spent the evening making paper bag covers and decorating the exteriors. The flowers are mine, the stars are Thomas." Roman felt like he should say something, but Logan moved on before he could. "This," he said, opening the bug book, "is an insect guide my mother bought for me when I was 4. Look, here in the pages." He pushed it toward Roman, flicking through them, almost every one of which had post-it notes stuck to them. The post-it notes had small pencil drawings on them, which had been preserved with something that smelled acrid but slightly floral. "Every time my mother sees a bug she thinks I will like," said Logan, pointing at one of the post-its, "she makes a sketch of it and gives it to me." Roman was starting to develop a lump in his throat. "And this," said Logan, moving on to the napkin, "this was in my lunchbox." He unfolded it and gestured for Roman to lean forward and read the writing. "Hope you like the berries, Barry. Love, Dad," Roman read, and he was really starting to feel like a jerk. "There is not actually anything stopping you from wandering off into a fairy hill and leaving your grandmother behind," said Logan, and he didn't seem to be having any trouble making eye contact now. "So why don't you?" Roman gave a wan smile. "Was this your roundabout way of telling me to shut up?" "This was my roundabout way of telling you that you are an ass," Logan said matter-of-factually. Roman choked on a laugh. "Well said," he conceded. "I'm sorry. Truly I am." "Well, you are my friend," said Logan, gathering back up the evidence. "So I forgive you." "Very gracious of you." "It is, isn't it?" said Logan. Logan and Roman's lockers were in the same hallway, at opposite ends. Roman barely carried anything, preferring to come to his locker between each class, but Logan only went to his in the morning and after lunch, so it took him much longer to get his things. Roman was twirling a pencil around his finger as he waited for Logan to be done. As such, he didn't see Robbie Harris coming until his feet were directly in front of him. "What do you want, Harris?" Roman snapped, stowing the pencil in one of his notebook spirals. "Where's freak number 3? Said Robbie. "Where's oaf number 1? Said Logan nastily. "Ah, come on, Sanders, we don't need Chad here to talk," said Robbie, shoving Logan's shoulder in a faux friendly way. "We never talk, just you and me." "That's because I find your company odorous and your personality repulsive." "Get lost, Harris, we have class," said Roman, shouldering past him. "You know," said Robbie, "I got me a feeling you might be late." "We are not going to engage with—" But before Logan could finish, Robbie pulled out a lumpy bag. Roman had just enough time to see Logan's eyes go wide with panic before Robbie turned it over and spilled the whole bag of field corn at Logan's feet. Later, Roman wouldn't actually remember punching Robbie. He would remember the teacher pulling him off of Robbie and the pinched, mortified expression on Logan's face as he gathered the corn kernels into a single pile and began to count them meticulously. "Office, now," said the teacher. "You are out of your mind," snarled Roman. "Unbelievable," the teacher said. "What is your name?" "Roman Gage," he spat, and then rattled off his grandmother's name in their homophone for good measure. "Call whoever you want, but I'm not going anywhere," he said, sitting down and leaning against the lockers. The teacher didn't seem to know what to do with a student that just ignored him entirely, and he couldn't actually drag Roman, so he turned his ire on the knot of students gathering around them. Roman wasn't sure what would happen if he distracted Logan. God forbid he had to start over. So he just sat close enough that Logan could see him in his peripherals and settled in for a long wait. The hallway emptied, and a few minutes later a set of footsteps started coming down it. Roman raised his head to snap at them and startled when he saw who could only be Logan's brother Thomas coming towards them. "Oh, Logan," Thomas said softly. He turned to Roman. "Who was it?" "Robbie Harris," said Roman. "I'm pretty sure I broke his nose," he said after a pause. Thomas winced. "I heard," he said. "Did you ditch class?" said Roman. "Sort of," said Thomas. He was obviously talking to Roman, but he kept his eyes on his brother. "I just said I was going to the bathroom. Just didn't mention I was coming here first." "I don't really know what to do," Roman confessed. "I'm just keeping him company, I suppose." "That's all you can do, really," said Thomas sadly. "I'm going to go tell Dad, if he doesn't already know." "What? You can't ditch school entirely. There's no use in all 3 of us being in trouble." Thomas shook his head before Roman finished speaking. "Our dad's the high school music teacher," said Thomas. "If I go around back, nobody will even see me." He stepped around Roman and put one hand on Logan's shoulder. Logan tilted his head and caught Thomas's hand in a strange little shoulder hug, even as his eyes didn't leave the corn and his mouth didn't stop moving, muttering the numbers. Roman winced. It was sweet, but it also proved Logan was perfectly aware of his surroundings, even as he sat there trapped. Thomas left, and Roman continued to sit, frustrated that he couldn't help, and becoming more and more anxious about what was going to happen. Maybe he'd made a mistake staying with Logan. He'd given Robbie Harris the chance to say whatever he wanted about what happened, and he might have made everything 10 times worse. It took about half an hour for Logan to finish, but he didn't speak when he was done. He brushed the field corn back into the bag, rested his elbows on his knees, and put his face in his hands. "Logan? You didn't have to stay," said Logan thickly. "Yes, I really did, Nicola, don't test me." Logan snorted. "Come on," said Roman, standing and offering his hand for Logan to take. "Time to face the music." "I'm sorry I got you in trouble." "I got me in trouble," said Roman, "and Robbie Harris better give both of us a wide berth, or I'm going to continue to get me in trouble." "Please do not." "I simply shall not be persuaded," said Roman loftily. "I am duty-bound to be your knight in shining jean jacket for as long as you are persecuted." "How very gracious of you," said Logan. "It is, isn't it?" Roman heard Mamaw coming all the way from the parking lot. The cane she used when she wasn't at home clacked loudly as she came ambling down the hallway, grumbling under her breath and scowling at the bright posters on the wall. "So," she said, "you punched the Sanders boy." Roman jerked. "What? No!" She raised her eyebrow. "They said on the phone you were in a fight with him." "No, the fight was about Logan," said Roman. "Robbie Harris dumped a bunch of field corn in front of him." Her eyebrows flew all the way up to her sparse hairline. "So you punched the Harris boy. And what?" Roman shifted, a little embarrassed. "I sat with him until he was done," he said quietly. She nodded a few times. She seemed to deliberate for a moment. Then she nodded firmly once more, like she'd resolved something in her mind. "Who's in there?" she said, pointing at the door with her cane. "Logan and his parents." "Well, what are you doing?" But Mamaw was already throwing open the door, and all Roman could do was follow her in.